Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Some of you know me as the voice behind the Parkour They Said podcast. The rest of you may know me from various events. If I haven't met you, I apologize. I'll try and meet you this weekend while we're here. I would like to just start right out of the gate to just do the acknowledgments first so we don't miss people at the end. There's a bunch of people that need to be thanked. Obviously, I want to start with the people who make Art of Retreat possible. Caitlin Pontrella, of course, Adam McClellan, who is not yet here, and Alan Tran, who dashed out of sight. He was just standing here. Alan's the guy who put this particular unit together, so we give him a hand of... All right, I'll do my best to speak up. I don't want to yell too much because it messes up the mic we're recording for the video. So if you can't hear me, let me know. Raise your hands, wave at me so I know to speak up or repeat myself. So the way this is going to work is, first we want to thank Parkour Earth and Mr. Eugene Minogue, who is here all the way over from England. He will be here all day today and all day tomorrow. He doesn't leave until Sunday morning, so don't panic if you don't get your question answered here. We also want to, of course, thank the International Parkour Federation and Victor Bevine, who will be here. And the way this is going to work is we'll do this in 3 units. You'll have to stare at me for a little while. I'm going to go over a little bit of some of the history and some of the things that have been happening, and I'll try to bring us up to what's happened most recently, just to make sure that everybody feels comfortable asking questions, everybody feels comfortable being on the same page. We also want to, of course, thank the Brooklyn Zoo for providing the venue, in particular, Geronimo Frias and Robin Friendstift. We also need to thank Parkour Generations Americas, who provided the notebooks this year. If you didn't get a notebook, grab one out of the end, but don't take 2. Right? Don't take 2 because there are people who aren't here yet. And finally, I want to thank 3 volunteers, Ed Akselrud in the headphones in the background in the video. There's also Andy Keller running around with a camera, and Nick Radanovic is helping him. So they're shooting stills and video, they'll be running around. All right, so first I want to say thank you for finding your way to the Brooklyn Zoo. I'm betting most of you have been here before. It's not terribly hard to find, especially easy in the daytime. I'm here presenting a summary first of a report that we wrote called the 2017 Report on the State of International Parkour Organization. It may or may not be in the Art of Retreat YAP app at this point. It's also in the Parkour forum that we built called parkourforum.world. You can pull it down from there. It's a giant PDF. Everything that I'm going to say is in the document. It's 40 pages long. It includes a statement from Parkour Earth. It's their announcement statement. 130 some odd footnotes. We spent 6 weeks digging through all of the old stuff to try and find information on all the different entities that have tried to organize and coordinate parkour to date. So I want to just go over that sort of history, and then before I do that, I'm going to explain how we're going to do these sessions. So I have specific goals for this session, and this is what I want you to get from it. If we do this, then I'm calling it a success. The goal here today is I want you to be better informed, all right? Don't confuse that with having all of your questions answered. There are too many of you to answer every question. So I want you to feel like you come away learning something that you didn't know before about both of the guests who will be here. I want you to be comfortable engaging with these topics. Most of you already are. You're already community leaders. But if there's something in the back of your mind, like you were afraid to engage on some topic because you didn't know some fine detail, I'm hoping I either tell you the detail, or that you find it in the report, or that you feel comfortable digging into that. All right? I want you to talk about these topics the rest of the weekend. These guys are going to both be here. They're expecting you to flying tackle them in the hallways and ask them questions. So don't feel like they're going to run away and hide. This is sort of like the warm-up session so that you can ask your questions and know what's going on, know who they are, feel comfortable talking to them. And the last thing, this is really most important, I really would like you to take this back to your community, because in my mind, I'm picturing every person sitting here has a wedge of people behind them, 20, 30, 40, hundreds of people behind you. And if I can get you engaged in these topics, and then you go back and turn around and engage your community. So that's one of the beautiful things about Art of Retreat. Okay, once I've finished, I have a brief presentation. Once I've finished that, what we're going to do is we're going to have an hour or more, depending how fast I get through my stuff. We'll have at least an hour with Eugene, and then another hour with Victor, and we'll do them separately. And what we're going to do is I have a list of pre-prepared questions. They're not softball questions like what's your dog's name and things like that. So I have a list of actual questions, and I'll start with some of those. But what I want you to do is if you think of a question while I'm talking or while they're talking at any time, there's a bin on the end over here, and Steve in the teal shirt is sort of collecting questions. So if you think of something that you want asked, don't hesitate to either stand up, write it down, pass it over. he'll go through it and check, because sometimes we have the same question multiple times. Some people have emailed questions in, so he's just going to like sort them and organize them, and occasionally I'll go over and mine the pile and then try to ask the questions. So that's how we're going to do Q&A. Any questions on that so far? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what's been done to date in terms of global parkour organization. So as we all know, it really was a snap, right, for the human race to settle on its global unified government culture and language, and that obviously doesn't work. This stuff is complicated. If you think that you have the answer, you're probably missing a fine detail. So find those unknown unknowns, sort that out, and then you'll be comfortable talking to other people about it. So the things that you're certain of, you want to look around the sides, around the corners, find those other pieces. So government, culture, language are complex features of our incredibly diverse human experience. And I don't mean that, that's like an important thing. You have to realize that when you say government, the way the French look at it, the way the English look at it, the United Kingdom English, the way the Americans look at it, fundamentally different takes on the thing. So globally, organizing, and I make the difference between little p parkour, the general umbrella term for everything, and the capital P parkour, which is David Bell's. So globally, organizing little p parkour and the capital P, the thing that David Bell still claims as his own, art de déplacement from the Yamakasi and freerunning, just defining what we're trying to organize is complex. And it's important that you get that right, that you explicitly decide what are you organizing or what are you not organizing when you're sorting things out. So, and that's of course before we mention, are we talking about certification, are we talking about competition, are we talking about the Olympics, are we going to start arguing about the philosophical underpinnings, are we going to talk about language? So it's a wide and complicated subject. So, one of my favorite quotes, those who fail to study history, doomed to repeat it. So let's at least take 15 minutes and just skim some history. Hopefully I found something that somebody doesn't know in here. So, pop quiz, anybody want to guess how many attempts there have been in the last 13 years? We're only going back to 2004, this is the earliest I could find. Past 13 years, how many attempts were there to organize parkour, big umbrella concept globally? 4, 5, 6, 7. Arguably 8, because one of them stopped and started again. So if you're taking notes, again, you don't have to, it's all in the report if you pull it down, I'm summarizing, but if you're taking notes, I'm going to first run through all 7 and hit you with the acronym soup and the names and the dates so that Eugene and I don't have to pause, like we're going to forget to expand our acronyms and stuff, so hopefully you'll get the soup all spelled out. So I'm going to run through them all, and it works like this, they fit on one card. So the Parkour World Association, or PAWA, anybody remember this? P-A-W-A. That appeared on the scene in 2004. I'm just giving names and dates here. Parkour International appears in 2010. The, pardon my French, Fédération Internationale des Arts de Déplacement, although it's usually just called FIAD, F-I-A-D-D, started in 2013. The International Parkour Federation, IPF, obviously was first founded in 2014. The movement, technically le mouvement with a U because French, right? It was 2014, it's actually a fairly recent addition. Then, of course, and I'm going to talk about them, the Fédération Internationale de Gymnastique, which you could say FIG or FIG, is F-I-G, and they appear on the parkour scene in 2016, 1881 I think is when they actually started. And of course, Parkour Earth launched just a few months ago, so 2017. So we have 7 completely separate social context, completely separate governmental bases. The way the French think about government is different than the way the English think about government. So 7 different attempts in 13 years. So according to PAWA's website, thanks to the Internet Archive, because it's long gone, according to PAWA's website, it was created to transmit, show, and develop parkour as David Bell's father communicated it to him. So that was his explanation of what PAWA was for. And one of the goals was to construct a parkour center where people could come and train. Other projects were to establish usage of the word parkour, so this is early enough in the history that the word wasn't super well known, and to actually attempt to count how many people were doing parkour around the world. That was what he wanted that thing to do. PAWA also planned to show how to progress in parkour from like a tutorial point of view. They also wanted to generally show you how to get over every obstacle you could conceivably encounter in an emergency situation. Very much the literal A to B in the service of helping others. That was one of their goals. So PAWA was formed in 2004, And David Bell withdrew in 2006. So it's a pretty short attempt at actually putting it together. It isn't clear. I don't think it was actually a legal entity. It's very tricky. People now can make a web page or set up a Facebook page, so it isn't entirely clear how organized it really was. So then Parkour International was founded in France, again by David Bell and several of his associates. I'm not going to name drop all the names. It's meant to be a body for reflection, training, and action, which aims to promote parkour, again, as expressly defined by David Bell. So in 2011, it was recognized under French law, which means they registered the company. And its efforts resulted in the recognition of parkour as a sport by a large multi-sport federation in France, which organizes local, regional, and country-sized competition. So parkour has been involved in competition since 2011, when it started being organized under this federation in France. So competition is fairly new in the 30-some-odd years, but didn't just start in the spring of 2017. So between 2014 and 2017, Parkour International went into, this is their words, a self-described hiatus. So they start in 2011, 2014, they're doing what they're attempting to do. They go on hiatus from 14 to 17. The founding members were supporting the movement after 2014. I'll talk about the movement. So this organization starts in 11, goes to 14, hits the pause button through 17, and then of course if you're following all this stuff, in 2017 the movement unraveled. I'll talk about the movement. The movement unraveled and Parkour International picked back up. I actually reached out to Florian Busey, had a conversation with him, but he didn't provide any actual responses that I could include in the report. Parkour Earth was the only organization, I mean, some of them don't exist anymore, the only one of the organizations that actually responded. So we contacted, I think, 4 of them, and Parkour Earth responded with actual information included in the report. So I have talked to Florian, but he hasn't given me, I mean, I asked him some specific but simple questions like, can I see the Constitution? Can I see the list of the officers? I wasn't asking for, explain the underpinnings. So that's what's going on with the Parkour International scene. So continuing in chronological order. So FIAD was launched in 2013. It's based in London, which I actually didn't realize until I started digging. So the Fédération Internationale d'Art de Déplacement, which is this very French-sounding organization, is based in London. If you know the backstory, you know why it's based in London. It was founded by, and this is their verbiage, founded by global parkour and free-running communities and pioneers of the discipline. So FIAD is committed to facilitating the sharing of ideas and information and actively assisting in the development and growth of parkour free-running worldwide. Principally, FIAD focuses on international standards for practicing, coaching, and reputation of parkour and free-running as it expands. And they're also interested in protecting and disseminating the values, ethics, and spirit of parkour and free-running. So there are a lot of people who know that FIAD is actually kind of closely related, depending how you want to define it, to the Parkour Generations group in London. It's actually a completely separate entity. Dan Edwards is no longer on the board, if you know who all the players are. So they are actually separate, but a lot of people think that Parkour Generations is like pulling the strings behind FIAD. Some of the players are the same, but they're different entities. All right, then we have 3 more. So the International Parkour Federation. So Victor Bevine will be here later. This is the 3rd session. So IPF is a not-for-profit corporation. It's registered in New Jersey. They were founded in 2014. And the mission of IPF is to promote the practice of parkour and related disciplines through community building, worldwide and local competitive and non-competitive events, charitable initiatives for underserved parkour communities, and the creation of affiliated parkour national governing bodies in countries around the world. So this is the first entity that has actually said that they're going to try and help bootstrap or lift up, however you want to word that, the national bodies. All right? In September, as in this month, in September, the IPF Constitution was revised. We almost missed it because it just happened. It was revised to include a technical committee, which they added, a technical committee, which is responsible for writing the rules of competition for the Olympic Games and other international contests that would be related to that. So IPF is adjusting, trying to accommodate, filling what I'm going to describe as a power vacuum, trying to fill that Internet Olympic Committee, IOC kind of problem that's creeping up. So that's the beginning of IPF. So now I want to rewind just a few years. I mentioned the movement's kind of wedged in the middle of Parkour International taking a hiatus. So the movement was launched in late 2014 in Paris and London by most many of the founders of parkour. This is actually rather impressive that they pulled this off. Parkour and ADD. So it's David Bell, Williams Bell, Chow Bell, Malik Gouf, sorry if I slaughtered his last name, Sebastian Faucon, Charles Pereire, notably Laurent Piantesi and Jan Natra did not partake in the organization. So right out of the gate, they already have a split. Two of the guys aren't on board for personal reasons. They have disagreements with David on a personal level. So in February 2016, so 2014, basically David and the Yamakasi managed to get together enough to start the movement. In 2016, the movement was invited by the International Olympic Committee to contribute to the Lillehammer 2016 Youth Olympic Games. So they put on a parkour and ADD presentation. It was part of, I didn't even know this existed, there's a sports and culture festival that happens next to the Youth Olympic Games. So all of the athletes who were there, all the people who come in, all the news and press, this was a big deal for parkour and for ADD to be able to be there at the Olympic Games. So what happened in the spring is not the first contact with the Internet Olympics and parkour. It's not the first contact with competition and parkour, but it was certainly, I'll talk about FIG in a second, it was a pretty aggressive chain of events. So, okay, so by 2017, this is all this year. So May, Sebastian Faucon, Williams Bell, and Chow are no longer involved in the movement. You know, if you want to ask me, I can tell you more. The sequence of events really isn't clear. It depends who you ask, and he said, she said, all this kind of thing. So the sequence of events is not clear, but it's obviously related to David and Charles interacting with FIG, the Gymnastics Federation, them interacting with FIG related to, and then there's a discussion, are they really trying to bring parkour into the Olympics? Are they trying to bring it into obstacle racing? I'll talk about that when I go over FIG. So as soon as David and Charles started talking to FIG, then that was sort of the fuse that set off the movement spinning apart. And that's the point where Parkour International, it's Florian Bussi is the administrator, updates the front of the Parkour International page to say, after a hiatus, we're reinitiating our activities. There's a new forum for Parkour International, which I was just on it. It either got hacked or it imploded, something happened to it, it's all mangled already. I don't know. And then like the final straw is in June, David and Charles posted on Facebook on the Parkour International page that they will continue to work for parkour in their own names and leave the other founding members of the movement free to work on their own respective disciplines. So right out of the gate, the movement is actually a legal entity, and there's finger pointing about who was actually the president at which times, and they had some sort of 8-month rotating, and Malik didn't even realize he was the president for 8 months, and they were like, oh, you had your turn already. So it's like they're working together, but they're not really working together. It's really complicated. All right. Sorry. FIG, sorry if this makes you twitch. FIG is the exclusive global umbrella organization that governs gymnastics, its rules, and its competitions. In early 2017, FIG worked internally to develop a new FIG discipline. So there's 7 gymnastics disciplines, I think. So they're making an 8th discipline, and it's related to obstacle course rating, obstacle course competitions, and parkour. Quite frankly, I think President Watanabe looks at parkour as like an up-and-coming sport, so if we could roll this in to be some sort of thing that's part of gymnastics, it would obviously be a draw. So it's pretty clear what they're doing. By May, FIG had approved a parkour roadmap. You may have seen there was some photos that went around, and somebody snapped it and like smuggled it out. But it basically describes the steps through 2020 about how they're going to produce a committee within FIG that will be responsible for deciding what the parkour competition format would be and all these details. So by late May, with the support of David and Charles, FIG staged the Obstacle Course Cup. So the event that happened in France was actually called the Obstacle Course Cup. You've probably seen pictures of David and Charles at the end shaking hands, and a lot of athletes boycotted it. So that was the Obstacle Course Cup. It happened in Montpellier, France, I think it was. And it was done in conjunction with something called FISE. So it really got confusing at the time because people were talking about the FISE competition and they're talking about the parkour race. It was actually an obstacle course cup that FIG had created to like test run this new concept of an event. And it happened at, I forget what FISE stands for, at FISE, which is a large collection of other urban activities like skateboarding and BMX bikes and stuff like that. So you can clearly see FIG trying to test, would parkour fit as an obstacle course race that's part of the urban activities, or should we put it in gymnastics? So it's pretty clear that they're co-opting it directly. And then one last bit. So in June, there's a meeting between the movement and FIG. And I got this from a press release, and to me that doesn't make sense because by this point the movement has exploded, so it's like, did 2 people from the movement show up and say we're representing the organization? Does that mean they have a quorum? So there's a lot of people just doing whatever they feel like doing. So the press release was that movement and FIG met and decided to dissolve the movement. So if you have only 2 people in the organization with like 7 founders and we decide we're going to disband the movement, how does that work? So it just completely unraveled to where they all just sort of rage quit. And the ADD guys just kind of like, whatever, and walked away. So this was followed, so they say, we're going to dissolve the movement, and then this is followed by a press release from FIG indicating that Parkour, so this is their words, Parkour continues to move forward as a FIG discipline despite some negative feedback of practitioners. So in mid-June, David and Charles meet directly with FIG in support of the competition idea. So from what I can tell, there's been no change of pace. It's still a happening thing. And then of course, and I don't mean to minimize Parkour Earth because you want to hear me talk about it, let's hear Eugene talk about it. But of course, most recently, Parkour Earth was established in July and uniquely, it started by 6 national entities that formed an accord, which is different than 7 individual people forming a nonprofit corporation or filing papers in lease to form an entity. So it's a different kind of structure than has been created previously. And then Parkour Earth intends to be the custodian of the philosophy, integrity, and sovereignty of the sport, art, and discipline of parkour, freerunning, and ADD. All right, and then I love jokes. TLDR is complicated. There isn't really anything in there that if you don't know it, it's going to wreck your life. But I'm hoping that you get a feel for how some of this comes together. And from 2014 to 2017, like the last 2.5 years, all of a sudden it's like a whole bunch of things happening on top of each other. So just brief diatribe. One of my pet peeves is social media. I mean, I love social media, but social media is not where you have discourse. And I'm in the, how many people are in the Parkour research group on Facebook? Show of hands. Yeah, right, everybody. I just for fun, scrolled backwards through the research group on a high-powered computer until, like it just adds JavaScript, until my Mac locked up. And I didn't get all the way back. I got to May, and I found conversations where people were asking really interesting questions, and there was really cool discourse happening, and we've all forgotten about it because you can't even get to it anymore. So I'm always jumping up and down saying, go to the Parkour Forum, which is a thing that I'll explain, a thing that I created. I don't care where you go. Go somewhere other than Facebook, right? You can post things on Facebook, you can talk about it on Facebook, but you should be talking face-to-face in your community. You should be writing blog posts. Some of you are, like I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit, but you should be writing blog posts, put your ideas out there, and especially we need to cross-post things that other people put up. So if Damien Puddle puts up an article, we all need to share it through social media to make sure that news outlets see those kinds of things. Because otherwise, FIG will just press release us. You know, they have funding, they have a press arm, they have a whole social media campaign, they employ people. So pay attention to your own personal conversation. What are you thinking? What are you asking? What are you trying to find out? But also have the meta discussion with yourself. Okay, how can I also do things to help multiply, force multiply what other people are doing? Very similar to Julie Angel's thing about, you know, you're creating parkour by what pictures you take. So what things you share, what you write, those are the things that create our side of the story. Okay. Before I move on to enough of me talking, I just want to zoom out a little bit and point out 4 like major issues that I'm hoping would stick in your head. There are other issues, but here are 4 good ones that are really important, I think. One, it's just one short card. One, there is a fundamental, and after decades, it's like looks like it's permanent. There's a fundamental schism between the people defining ADD and the person or people defining parkour. So one of the things that I always point at is, which is it? And as soon as you say, I'm putting the 2 of them under an umbrella, now you know that's funny, right? Like, oh, right, that's going to work well. So what people are doing is they're creating little p parkour, right? And capital P parkour. And if you don't train with David Bell and do exactly what he says and train in the schools, you're doing little p parkour. Now we have 3 things. There's an old XKCD joke about, oh, we have 10 standards. They're all competing in different. That's stupid. Let's make an 11th standard that solves everything. Oh, we have 11 competing standards. You know. So this whole idea of there's a split, it's a philosophical difference. It's a bunch of teenagers and 20-somethings, you know, that they weren't thinking that. They were out there doing the good work of training and bettering themselves, which makes all this possible. But none of them ever stopped to think, what were they actually doing from a philosophical point of view? So I encourage you not to just skip over that issue in your thinking, in your writing. What am I really doing? Am I doing parkour with a little p, with a big P? Am I doing un déplacement? Am I doing free running? Like what's going on? Pick that apart. That's really important. The second thing from like the big out focus is we kind of did this to ourselves, right? The absence of a global governing body meant that parkour cannot be in the Olympics. If you look at how the IOC works, they have like a rule that's like, we don't do any complications. You got to have 40 nations all unified, and then you have like a de facto governing body. Now you can be an Olympic event. So because we didn't have that, we automatically created this power vacuum. And we all know parkour's cool. People are getting into it. So we created the power vacuum. It's no surprise at all that FEEG stepped in. It's actually a surprise that they didn't get there sooner and that other people haven't stepped in. And we all know the stories about stand-up paddling and stand-up paddleboarding and snowboarding as part of skiing and BMX racing as part of like street bicycling and all those. We all know those. Okay, that's 2. 3, you have that same vacuum, that same power vacuum happens at the national level. So this whole discussion, you gotta take this whole discussion to the United States and then Canada and then every other country. I'm a big fan of get your own house in order first. And the United States has unique issues because we're a federation, we're a republic of independent, basically little countries. And one of the things that I would love to see figured out is the way you get into schools to teach. It's actually rather difficult. And just because you figured out how to do that in New Jersey, maybe that's where your gyms are, and that's how you figure out what forms get filed and background checks, and now you want to do Pennsylvania. It's the exact same set of work all over again. Canada doesn't have these problems. France doesn't have these problems. But the United States has a whole different level of problems. So each one of the countries, which is all but 6, each one of the countries in the world has this power vacuum. And all it's going to take is one well-organized somebody to step in there and take advantage of us or whatever. So just be aware that there's 2 layers to the power vacuum. You have the global issue, and which now we're fighting about, and you're going to have national level stuff. All right, and then 4th, oh wait, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you have the same power vacuum, which happens. Sorry, I screwed up. You have the global vacuum in terms of the Olympics, and you have the global vacuum in terms of just parkour in general. So there's 2 whole things at the top. So when you're looking at international organizations for parkour, are they focused on the Olympics? Are they focused on maybe certification and philosophy? Or are they focused on both? Those 2 things are completely different ideas at the global level. And then the 4th one was the national level power vacuum. Sorry. Okay. Oh, outstanding. I'm trying to go fast because I just want to like get this out there. If you're interested, ask me, read the report. I skipped over the fact that I'm part of a group of 4 people that were basically a think tank, and we took this on. Everybody knows my wife, Tracy, and then 2 other people, and the 4 of us got interested in this, and we just started reading and researching, and we said, oh, let's just write a doctoral dissertation about it and put it together. So my hope is don't go digging for anything. If you have a question, look in the report. If it isn't there, yell at me, and then we can all just go forward rather than looking at any of the mistakes or any of the successes that have been done in the past. All right, I'm basically right on time, so what I want to do is ask if there are any questions related to what I'm talking about. I can't imagine you're really that interested. But if there are any questions.
Where did you say you could find that report again?
It's supposed to be in YAPS. The first place I would look is, the YAPP. Yeah. Look in YAP. If it's not there, Caitlin will upload it. And the other place is the Parkour Forums, just spelled P-A-R-K, forum.world. It's a PHPBE. It's like looks like it's 15 years old, but it's brand new. It's literally just a website with a forum on it. And like I was saying, the think tank that I created, we're footing the bill. There's no advertising. It's free to read. And the whole point is, people who don't have websites and blogs, put stuff in there. Google can find it. You can link to it. You can drop those links on Facebook. But it's just a forum. Anything else?